Right then folks, here we are, it's about 11:30. It is slippery. We've had a little bit of snow, so obviously that's made the surface incredibly slippery to say the least. So walking on grass is a lot less slippery than walking on the tarmac. That's a certainty, yeah. There's a thin layer of ice on top of the tarmac, so we're loose ice because of the snow, so yeah. Well, I think it's called sleet that we've had. I went down to the shops earlier and there was snow coming a good angle into the car window, so you could see every little bit of snowflake that hit the car window, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, so all fun and games there. So it's a bit nippy, but it's not too bad because it's quite cloudy as well, so potential rain or snow at any point in time. Anyway, yes, okay, so the video I did earlier on growth. Yeah. Now, the way that ended was a very important point. And one thing I will say is I've noticed with videos recently is that they're ending very strong. Not necessarily starting very strong, but they're ending very strong. On the grass. There we go, on the grass. Anyway, right, what I was saying was, yes, the video seemed to be ending quite strongly. Because that one ended on a very important point. That as Christians, you start as babies and you're supposed to grow into development the same as you would as a human. You know, you start as baby, grow into development, grow into adulthood. It's the same thing. It is true. It is true to the point of you go back to child as you become a Christian. You go back to, because you are now a child as a Christian. You don't have the learning, you don't have the understanding, you don't have the training. So you basically got to go back to school. Of course you have. Because you've got to have your old man die and have your mind renewed. So with that being the case, there's a learning that has to take place. The problem is, the majority of Christians have never gone through that learning. Part of the reason they haven't is because, as I said in the previous one, going through that means you've got to make some difficult decisions. You've got to choose to do things in life. And of course, not easy to do, because those sort of things are difficult. And say, because you learn about you learn about the issues you have. You learn about the sin that so easily gets you. And you learn that you're weak in certain areas. And so, where you're weak, you know you have to develop strength. In the areas that you're weak, you have to be resistant. And of course, that is not easy. It's like saying to someone who is obese and who loves cake, cake is bad for you. Stop eating cake. If you keep eating cakes, you're going to die. That person doesn't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. That's a difficult thing to hear, and it's a difficult thing to have to deal with. They like cake. You're telling them they can't eat cake anymore. That's difficult. So of course, people in the church run away from that sort of decision making. Now, partly the reason why is because you go back in church history in the 1950s and 60s, and before then, the church was all about condemnation, judgment, sin, death, punishment, all that sort of stuff. And so, when the church decided, right, society's getting away from us a bit now with this free love movement and all the rest. We need to do something different here. They went away from that completely and went into this grace, mercy, love, forbearance, fluffy wuffy Christianity. Problem is, both are God. Both are Christianity. Both are. You can't have one without the other. Not successfully. That's why it didn't work pre-1960s. That's why it hasn't worked since. You can't have the, darker side and just that, no more than you can have the fluffy side and just that. You've got to have both. That's that sound on a coin. You can have heads or you can have tails, but you can't have heads and tails. Of course, it's typically understood that with a coin you have heads and tails. Right? You have both. Both have their parts to play. You use both. I'm walking a bit gingerly here because it is slippery. I'm not an ice skater, never have been. I was also useless on roller skates when I was younger, so balance is not my key. It's not my best thing in any way, shape or form. So, yeah. Always a bit ginger. Or walk a bit carefully on things that are slippery. I don't like slippery. I like the videos where people fall over. I do. I just don't want to be in one. Yeah. No. Anyhow, so yeah. Look. In the end, folks, we need consequences back. Consequences are key to living a successful Christian life. The reason is quite simple. How are people going to make the right decisions unless you understand the consequences of the wrong decision? If you don't understand the consequences of making the wrong decision, how are you going to be expected to make the right decision? See, the problem is we live in a world where, and a church, where, generally speaking, we don't like to think about the consequences of what we're doing. And the problem with that is, that's going to lead people to end up on the wrong path. On the path to hell. And the problem is, if you die while you're still on that path, you end up spending eternity in hell and you get punished far worse than anyone else, because that's one of the consequences. The devil is trying to lead you away from God's path, because the devil knows that your hell won't need to be any special punishment. Your hell will simply be being told day in, day out, day in, day out. You were in church. You were that close to having an eternity in heaven. But you didn't want to take it seriously. Well, that's the reality. Excuse me, who are you shouting at? Pack it up. Stop shouting. And two arguing over dodgy bot. Emma, come. This way. We're going to stay on the grass as much as is possible, I think. Yeah, I mean, in the end, the reality is consequences matter. They're very important. Because as I sort of spoke a tiny bit about a second ago, when you understand the consequences of a bad decision, you're more likely to take time in making your decision. You're more than likely to maybe look into things a bit more, to look into the consequences of things a bit more, because they matter. Because the consequences matter. And that's the thing. What you want is to have the ability to make the right decision. More times than not. That's what you want. Certainly a case, making the wrong decision, not good. That's bad. We don't want that, not in any way, shape or form. Making the wrong decision is bad. We don't want that. Because it leads to pain, it leads to struggles, it leads to difficulties. And as I say, if you're a Christian and you keep making the wrong decisions, you keep on having that sort of pain, but you're believing, because the church hasn't taught you, that you're being led and guided by God, right? And that God is therefore leading you wrong. 1 second, Mollie Collie. Who's missing? Where's Mollie Collie? Come on, Mollie Collie, what are you doing? What you doing, my girl? Hey, being all the way over there, mucking around over there, ain't you? My girly. Big good girly. That's it. I mean, if you're taught to be led and guided by the Holy Spirit, then you're more than likely to be making the right decisions. If you just believe, like so many Christians do, that you make a decision, well, somehow God has guided you to make that decision, even though guided you based on what? Based on what evidence? Based on what practice? What were you doing that meant that God was guiding you? Were you doing anything? No. Were you asking God to guide you necessarily? Not really. Okay, so how was God guiding you? When truth of the matter is, he wasn't. Not in any way, shape or form. He wasn't guiding you. But you believe that God was guiding you because that's what you wanted to believe. Right? That's the reality. You believe that because it suited you, because then you didn't have to do anything, did you? You didn't have to spend all those hours reading the Bible or spend all those hours in praise and worship developing a relationship with God. Right? You didn't have to spend all that time in prayer and seeking the Holy Spirit and, seeking his guidance and trying not to move unless the Holy Spirit was guiding you to go somewhere. You didn't want to deal with that, did you? No. You just wanted to be like everyone else. Just, you went to church on a Sunday, that was it. You might have done a bit of praise and worship. You might have even led a bit of praise and worship. But again, okay, you led a bit of praise and worship. Did you lead that with understanding? Did you lead it with understanding? Did you understand the purpose of praise and worship? The purpose of people leading praise and worship? No. You just happened to learn the songs, you got up there and you started singing. There you go. You had a half decent singing voice, that's all that matters, isn't it, really? Yeah? No. That is not what matters. Having a half decent singing voice is not the purpose of that. The whole purpose of that is that you, as the person who is leading the worship, your job is to look out in front of you. See those people out in front? Your job is to help them to worship in ways that they've never imagined they could worship. That's your job. To lead people into worship, but into worshipping in ways that they never dreamed they could. You can only do that if you're guided by the Holy Spirit. You cannot do that if you're guided by heart or head. You have to be guided by the Holy Spirit to be able to do that. That's the reality of the situation. If you're trying to do any sort of ministry, any sort of ministry by any other way than being led and guided by the Holy Spirit, you are going to fail miserably. We're supposed to grow. Once we grow, we can then walk as an adult. We can then walk as a man or a woman of God, not just a child. But we have to grow. So we're not going to grow if we ban anything that's challenging. If we ban anything that's offensive, we're not going to grow. You need to be offended to be able to grow. Because when you get offended, you have to go to God and say, well, Lord, what's going on there? Is what this person said true? Now, if God says yes, okay, right. Is it true for me? Does it apply to me? Because just because something's true doesn't mean it applies to you. So does it apply to me? Yeah. Okay. Right, okay. Well, Lord, help me. What can I do about this? If the answer is no, it doesn't apply to you. This person is having a go at you about something that doesn't apply to you. Therefore, the person isn't being led or guided by God. Therefore, what do? If you're dealing with it as in God's kingdom way of dealing with it, instead of the world's way of dealing with it, you pray for that person. You pray that God will lead and guide that person. Help that person to know how to approach that sort of situation in a better way. That's what you do. If you react according to the world, you go and tell everyone else how nasty this person was. How this person says something nasty about you. How dare they? That's what you focus on. How dare they say something nasty like that about you? That is your focus. But should that be your focus? Is that what your focus should be? Really? No. No, you're going to do things God's way, haven't you? You've got to pray for that person because, and put it this way, most people say things either out of love or out of a lack of understanding. You know, most people don't say things to you that are challenging or offensive because they're trying to offend you. That just isn't the case. Now, you can take offence to whatever you like. Certainly anyone who gets in the conversation with me on a regular basis is going to be offended sometimes. Yep. Not because I will ever try necessarily to offend you, but I will certainly do nothing to try not to offend you. Because my job isn't to please you. My job is to please God. And I'm going to make mistakes. I am. I said at the beginning of this video that I've realised that quite often at the end of the videos that I do, that's when the real fire is. That's when the real stuff that's like, wow, okay, that's a good point. And that's when you know it was God speaking, not you. It's like, well, okay, we need to get to that quicker. We're learning. That's the thing, we're learning. I'm learning. Everyone else needs to learn. We all need to learn. We all need to be better at the things we do things better. But that's the thing, we need to learn. It's a process. It's something that we need to do. It's not a given that that's going to happen, is it, really? Not in any way, shape or form, no. Not a given, but it is what it is, isn't it? Yeah. That's growing, you see. Yeah, realising that you are so many miles away from where you need to be. That's maturity. There's maturity in that. When you speak to people and they suggest, even for a second, that church isn't that bad really, and that we're doing okay really, straight away, as soon as someone starts speaking like that to me, it's like, I can discount everything you say now, really. I can. Because you're just saying the usual claptrap that comes out of Christians' mouths. They try to defend the church because, what? As if the church was God. It's not God. No. The head is Yeshua, the body is us. Yeah, criticising us isn't criticising God. It's saying we've got it wrong. That's not necessarily criticising God. But then saying we're doing okay, as soon as people say that, then straight away you say, okay, if you were really doing okay in this world, what would be happening? What would the impact be? Are you seeing that impact? And as soon as you say that, are you seeing that impact? They have to say no. They have to say no because they're not seeing that impact, are they? No. That's okay. That's okay. Now, I've never, ever, ever had that conversation with people because I'm trying to crush them. Never do that. Never do that. It's not about making yourself look good and then look bad or anything like that. Because in the end, that's worldly. That's how the world does things. That's not how we are supposed to do things in any way, shape or form. We're not supposed to do that. That's what Amber's having to play. She's got something that Riley wants. So, go on, Amber. You go play with it. You go play with it, big girl. Now, normally in these videos, you see the dogs better because normally we walk in the areas that are well lit. Problem is, those areas are quite slippery tonight. So that's why I'm not walking in those areas that are well lit. So you don't get to see the dogs in such good detail. But there you go, you've seen them before. If you haven't, then click on the channel and you'll see them in other videos. So you don't necessarily need to see them in this one, do you? There you go. Well, said about consequences. Consequences, yes. Well, consequences are important to all of us. Christian, non-Christian. We all need to look at the consequences. Amber! Amber! Ah. Leave Mollie now. Mollie, leave. Mollie, leave. Go on, Mollie, you take it. You take it, but thank you. I was going to give it to Amber, but she left it at some point, so that's cool. Yeah, consequences are important to everyone. Because you look at it from a worldly point of view, even in the worldly situation, those people in the world, they want to be making the right decisions. But again, unless they understand the consequences of making the wrong decisions, they're not really going to bother that much, are they? Yeah, you've got to help people to understand the consequences, because when it comes down to it, that's the key to so many things really, consequences. Understanding consequences. Once you understand that stuff, you can then start making changes. You can make the changes that are needed to make sure you avoid a lot of these consequences in future. Well, because you know they're not good. They're not good for you. No, to have to face these things, these consequences, it wouldn't be good in any way, shape or form. Oh, you want to avoid that. But yeah, So consequences from a Christian point of view. Okay. From a Christian point of view, consequences are incredibly important because you need to understand. If the truth is, once saved, always saved, if that principle is true, that once you give your life to God, that's it, you're saved, you don't need to do anything, well then, okay, do what you want. Seriously, do what you want. It doesn't matter, there's no consequences, is there? You do what you want. If, however, that is not true, that going forward in a meeting to give your life to God is not all it takes. Well, because, put it this way, my understanding with that is, the Lord then talks about the seed falling upon different types of ground. And only on one type of ground does it bear fruit, where the Lord has earlier spoken about what happens if the vine is not bearing fruit, what happens to the branches. Now, if you understand these things, then you will understand that bearing fruit is important, and that not bearing fruit is not a good thing, that there are consequences to that. So let's assume you understand that. If you understand that, you're now in the situation where you understand that there are consequences to not being right with God, that there are consequences to not being mature to the point where God can use you so that you can bear fruit. If you understand that, then you're in a much stronger position. Riley, would you move out of the way? Get in my way, mate. Shift your butt. Yeah, if you understand that, then you're in a much stronger position to ensure that you're more likely to be used by God, because you understand that you're here for a reason. You've not just been left here. Yeah, that you give your life to God and God leaves you here until you die, and when you die you go to heaven. Right? Now, a lot of people who go to church who believe that that's basically what it is. It isn't, but there are a lot of people that believe that is basically what it is. But yeah, if you understand that isn't the case, that it isn't that, well then you have a far better chance of being used by God, of your life glorifying God in some way. They're having a little play right now. They're enjoying. They found a long sticky. So Mollie wanted it and the rest are trying to have it, and she's saying, nope, mine. Anyway, yeah, about consequences. So, put it this way. I've spoken a lot about marriage and about the fact that God has someone designed for you. But too many people haven't actually bothered, when they meet someone, to check whether that person is the person that God had designed for them. So, with that being the case, if you understood the consequences, now let's say for a second, if the consequences of marrying the wrong person meant you couldn't divorce, or if you divorced, you couldn't marry the right person, therefore. If those really were the consequences, would people be more careful about who they marry? I think they would. I think people would be a lot more careful about who they marry. Yeah, because in the end, the consequences to marrying the wrong person would be big. They wouldn't want to do it. They wouldn't want to risk it. Because, as I say, quite often what happens is you've got the right person there. The right person is within grasp. Maybe you haven't met that person yet, but you met someone. That's someone you have met, you get along quite well with. But let's say, for example, that right person, you're going to meet them in October. But you're now engaged to the wrong person. You're going to get married to that person in July. All you have to do was wait until October. You met the right person, you'll be marrying the right person. As I said, you know, a lot of people don't understand that if you're marrying the right person, if you married the right person, really from the moment you first saw that person, you should have been madly in love with them. You should have been head over heels with that person to the point where you couldn't handle being in a room with that person. And you couldn't handle being away from them. And once you started seeing them and spending time with them, you couldn't handle being away from them. Now, if that wasn't the case, you're not with the right person. Simple. But there are consequences. One of the consequences are that when you get with the right person, if that right person knows you've married the wrong person, you're going to have to try and persuade that person that I married the wrong person once, but I'm not doing that with you. Yeah, this time I have actually bothered to check with God. It's okay that if you marry the wrong person, you get that marriage annulled, that's great. That's fine. No harm, no foul. But if you don't get it annulled, if you end up having marital relations with the wrong person, there are consequences to that. You've been joined to someone you shouldn't have been joined to. Because, again, don't be stupid enough to believe that every single marriage that is performed is one that God has joined together. Don't be stupid enough to believe that. Because that is just not true in any way, shape or form. Just not true at all. Well, as I said, the reality is that consequences matter. They matter. Making the right decisions matter. Because whether you believe in consequences or not, they're going to be there. They are going to be there. Because they have to be there. Because you have to learn. Okay? God will make sure that consequences are there because you have to learn. The problem is, if you don't learn from the consequences, you're going to keep on going through it. That's why a lot of people, they go through relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship without actually sorting anything out. And after every relationship, their heart is breaking. Their heart is breaking. And it happens every single time. Why? Because they never actually do anything. They take the same baggage into every relationship. They make the same mistakes in every relationship. God is trying to teach them consequences, but they won't listen. So they have to keep on going through it. Sometimes the consequences are going to get worse. Yeah. Is God trying to get your attention? Sometimes he is, isn't he? Sometimes God is trying to get your attention. I tell you, it's awful. I mean, I look online on YouTube, some of these Yeah, I've looked at some of these Reddit relationship ones, and God, some of the things that go on are just awful, absolutely blinking awful, really terrible. And what people expect their partners to put up with is also just ridiculous, really. Some of the things that people expect their husbands or wives to put up with is just crazy. There was one lady who, the husband believed that she had had a job and that she was going away to work on important bits of work every now and again. She had to travel a lot, so he was thinking, oh, okay, that's for work, that's fine. She's got to travel a lot, okay, yeah, that's cool. Then he come home one day and found her beaten up on the couch, all bloody and bruised. And he's like, well, we've got to go to the police. Got to take you to the hospital. She says, no, can't do that. Can't go to the police, can't go to the hospital. She then broke down a bit and said, well, I've not been doing that job that I told you about. I've been lying about that for the past 6 months. I'm actually a prostitute. You know, I've been meeting men and charging them for sex, and this was one bloke I met in a hotel room. He was drunk, he beat me up, he paid me extra at the end saying, sorry, I couldn't help myself, but if you call the police we both get in trouble for this, so please don't call the police. And then she was trying to explain to her husband that she thought a 9-to-5 job was demeaning and was well below her. It's like, yeah, excuse me, but you think that prostituting yourself is not below you? You think that that isn't demeaning? What is going on in your head? How can you believe that a 9-to-5 is demeaning and below you, but not believe that selling yourself in such a way? Well, she then says, well, because at least at the work I do now, I know I've got a value. Yeah, people are saying that's what you're worth. That's not the same as saying you've got a value. Oh. Well, she expected her husband to just put up with it and to accept it as it was and to stay with her. Of course he couldn't do that. There's no way, shape or form he could do that. Yeah, his wife, the woman that he loved, was doing that. He couldn't do that. No, he couldn't do that. Of course he couldn't do that. No. That was not what he was expecting, not in any way, shape or form. He certainly wasn't expecting his wife to be doing that. Whereas he said, even though it's not technically cheating, really, but it is. Instead of cheating with one person, she's cheating with all these different people. Yeah, and he's obviously got to get an SDT check as well now, and oh, jeez. The amount of things that people put their supposed loved ones through is just insane. Stop doing it. Pack it up. Stop doing this stuff. You don't need to do it. You really, really don't. It is a bit mad, to say the least. But consequences, that's the thing, is that the lady herself wasn't thinking about the consequences of her actions. She wasn't thinking one of the consequences of meeting men and selling her body in this way was that she might meet a man who could be violent towards her. Well, then one was. Well, then she was lying to her husband for all that time, and she wasn't thinking that, well, maybe it could cost her marriage. Well, it did. It did. It cost her marriage. She wasn't thinking that that was likely. But it happened in the end, didn't it? Yeah. There were consequences to her actions, consequences that she wasn't thinking of. She wasn't betting on these things, was she, really? She didn't weigh them up. I mean, look, she could have spoken to her husband before she got involved in that work, and she could have said, look, I'm thinking about doing this, you know. Now, he's worldly, she's worldly, maybe he would have been okay with it. Had she spoken to him about it, maybe they could have reasoned it and worked out that, yeah, it could be helpful for money. I'm not saying that's right, certainly not right. Not according to the way I think, that's not right, but yeah, they could have considered it to be right concerning how they think. But nope, she didn't do that. She didn't think of the consequences of her actions. And it cost her a beating, and it cost her her marriage. And so in the end, there you go. People have got to understand that there are consequences to our actions. There always are. You know, you may think you can get away with it. You may think you have gotten away with it. Go on, Chewie, and you get. Eventually, it's going to bite you in the arse. That's how it works. That's life. That's how consequences work. They bite you in the arse. Because you think you've gotten away with it, and then out of nowhere, bang, the consequences are right there, right in your face. And so, yeah, you've got to think. You've got to try and make the right decisions in life. But you've got to understand the consequences of making the wrong ones. Be led and guided by the Holy Spirit. Make the right decisions. You take care, God bless. It's starting to do something. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's rain. I don't think it's snow. Hell, possibly. Hailstones. I don't think hell as in hell. Hailstones, possibly. It's doing tingy on the metal of the car. So anyway, you take care. God bless. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.